Hello, how's everyone doing today? I'm here with special guest Walter Moderate Block. Walter Block is the writer of such books as Defending the Undefendable 1, 2, 3 is in the works, uh, Legalized Blackmail. How are you doing today?
And other moderate subjects.
And other moderate subjects, of
Thanks
course.
for having me. It's always good to be with you.
You too, been a while. So I guess my first one, I've been defending you, but I'll criticize you later. You have to start first defending people before you criticize them. So I guess the first thing, that I want to talk, because some people have said, how could Walter defend, a guy like Trump, you know, and I said, I think Walter did the same thing when it came to Obama, and I guess my reply is, I agree with you, and I agree with Lysander Spooner that voting per se is not an act of aggression, and I agree that the lesser of two evils is better than a greater evil. But I don't see why we should rally behind a guy like Trump, who's not a libertarian in the slightest, and who doesn't even need our help anyway, right? I mean, I'm not a fan of Gary Johnson, but if you said, vote for Gary Johnson, I would say he's not a great libertarian, but he's certainly better than them. I mean, my own view is if you're going to engage in electoral politics, vote for the most principled guy possible, and Trump ain't it.
Okay. I think you're stating the objection pretty fairly. There's an economist joke. The economist was asked, "How is your wife?" And his answer was, "Compare to what?"
Right.
So what are we comparing Donald to? If we're comparing Donald to Gary Johnson, I favor Gary Johnson. Gary Johnson is no real good libertarian, but he's sort of a quasi-demi, semi-libertarian, vaguely libertarian. By the way, Donald is too. I mean, on political correctness, he's magnificent. And
he's very politically correct.
No, he's not politically correct. My man,
what are you
Donald,
talking about? You offend him, he will try to shut you up. He's only politically incorrect when it comes to other people, not when it comes to himself.
Wait a second. Wait, Donald is probably more politically incorrect than Gary. And Donald has said some good things on foreign policy, good libertarian things like I can get along with Putin, whereas Hillary is saying Putin is a Hitler or a thug. And I mean, we had a whole Cold War. What's the point of calling him a thug or a Hitler? You got to get along with him. He's represents a pretty powerful country. And Donald has also said things like, look, yes, Gaddafi was not really good, but what we got after we got rid of him is worse. And the same thing in Iraq, and the same thing with Syria. If we get rid of Bashar Assad, we'll get ISIS, and ISIS is worse. And he says that, he's no Ron Paul. He doesn't say let's pull out all the troops, but he said some good things about a less invasive imperialist foreign policy. And I think that compared to Hillary, he is magnificent. So if we're comparing Donald to Hillary, I think it's hands down no contest. Donald is better than Hillary. Right. Now, when you bring in Gary Johnson, the problem with Gary Johnson is he's probably not going to get on the debate. I think that they've decided that they won't invite him. And he's now polling somewhere between 7 and 14%. He's just a little under the 15, although in some states he's above 15. But nationally, he's somewhere around 10%, which is excellent for a libertarian. But still, the odds of him becoming the next president are very, very small. I don't say zero, because if he can somehow win in New Mexico, say, and forget about Massachusetts, where his vice presidential candidate is from, and forget about Utah, where he's supposed to have a chance. Just New Mexico. Just give him New Mexico, and then Hillary and Donald tie, and neither one gets 270. Well, it goes to the House of Representatives, and they could pick Gary. They don't have to pick Donald or Hillary. So
okay, I think that's dreaming, but
I think it's dreaming. It's very, very unlikely. So let's assume it away, just for argument's sake. And if we assume it away, then then Gary is out of the picture, and it's just Donald versus Hillary, and who is the lesser of two evils? This is a no-brainer. Obviously, Donald is the lesser of two evils because mainly of foreign policy, and I don't much relish World War III. It can ruin our whole day, maybe even the whole week if we have an exchange of nuclear weapons here and there. It'd be very, very bad. And you know, Hillary is sort of supporting NATO, and NATO is having war games right on Russia's front door. And then when Putin puts some Russian troops within Russia near the border, they start saying that he's aggressive. I mean, how would we like it if Putin was having war games with Canada or Mexico, or had ships in San Francisco Bay or in near New York City Harbor? That's roughly what the U.S. is doing to him, and Hillary is supporting that. Now, it's true Donald has lately been making nice with neocons, but you know, if it's Hillary versus Donald, I think it's very clear for the libertarian, Donald all the way. Look, I supported my man Barack Obama against McCain. Why? Because I thought McCain was a maniac. I thought his finger near that red button, and it's game over. Does that mean that I think Barack Obama was a libertarian? Come on, give me a break. No, he's not a libertarian, but he was better than McCain on foreign policy. And foreign policy is more important than economics and personal liberties put together, because foreign policy, one, means more deaths or lives, and the other, it leads to domestic policies too, as Higgs and Rothbard have demonstrated over and over again. So I think my conscience is clear. My libertarian credentials are still okay in supporting Trump.
Right. So I think a few things to that. I agree with you that Trump is probably the lesser evil, although slightly, like a very thin, very, very thin margin. Although for me, when I consider lesser evil, it's not really so much as the policy positions that they stand for, but the odds of them being able to implement it. So for me, I would say one of the reasons I would say Trump is slightly lesser evil than Clinton is because I think Clinton will be able to get done more what she wants to get done than Trump. So, you know, for the sake of argument, let's say, you know, Hillary is half as bad as Trump, let's just say for the sake of argument, and they both have horrible positions. But Trump has a 5% chance of implementing his ideas, whereas Hillary's, which are only half bad, she has a 95%. Well, I would say that Trump is better, because even if, let's say, Hillary's ideas are better, what matters isn't what their ideas are, but them being able to be implemented. So I think on that front, I mean, I think the fact, you know, to quote Jeffrey Tucker, the best thing about Gary Johnson is that everyone hates him.
The best thing about Gary Johnson is everyone hates him? Everyone hates Gary Johnson?
I think he was being a bit coy, but I think he was saying that, well, a lot of libertarians are very, you know, like, ugh, this is the guy they picked, you know?
Look, a lot of libertarians are disappointed in him. I mean, you know, he's now talking about banning cigarettes, for God's sakes. I mean, you know, he's a libertarian by courtesy only, or I don't know how he got to, well, I know how he got the nomination because he ran last 4 years ago, and he's more famous than anyone else. But, okay, his libertarian credentials are very brittle or very weak. And I agree with your point about we have to take into account the probability that Hillary or Donald will be able to implement their policies. And I think you're right in saying that Donald is less likely to be able to implement them than is Hillary, and that's a point in his favor. But when you say that the difference between the two is only a dime's worth of difference or something, I think that, well, with all due respect, I heartily and strongly disagree with you.
Well, here's why. First of all, let's assume, for the sake of argument, and it's a very big assumption, that the politicians say what they're believing.
Let's go out on a limb.
Right. So let's say that Trump is less warmongery than Hillary. Well, Trump wants to have economic sanctions, severe ones, and economic sanctions lead to war. So the idea that you're just going to impose economic sanctions throughout the globe or 30% tariffs, and that's not going to create war, I think that's crazy. You're not going to not have war if you have severe sanctions. So even though he might say he's less militaristic than Clinton, he's implementing policies that will lead to, I think, war anyway.
Well, you make a good point. I think some famous libertarians said that if goods don't cross borders, armies will.
Right.
Uh, I forget who it was, maybe Bastiat or some
Yeah,
good guy.
Basquiat.
Maybe Bastiat. I don't remember, but I agree with you. But Hillary is no free trader.
I agree.
I mean, this TPP is, not really a free trade deal, but I'll grant you that Donald is a little bit worse on free trade than Hillary. Hillary is a little bit better on free trade. I'll grant you that. But to say that overall the the two of them are roughly equal, or Hillary is only slightly worse than Donald from a libertarian point of view, I think is wrongheaded. Yes, you make a good point on free trade. I'll give Donald a 1 out of 10 and Hillary a 2 out of 10 or something like that. Fine, but she's calling Putin a Hitler. That's scary. I mean, Hitler is not good. I don't know if you understand U.S. politics, but Hitler is not good. When you call someone
Hitler now because he's dead, so he can do very little harm now.
That's true. But when you call someone else who's alive a Hitler, this is not a good sign. So I agree with you that if goods don't cross borders, then armies will. And this is very dangerous, not only from an economic point of view, but from political point of view. But that's sort of implicit or indirect war. Hillary is sort of in favor of direct war. Namely, let's go sort out the Ukraine thing and kick Putin out of Crimea. I mean, that's the sort of a thing that Hillary might contemplate, whereas Donald would never in a million years contemplate. So on foreign policy, I think it's a gigantic difference. And then there's also the Supreme Court. If Hillary gets in, she could pick what's his name, Obama as a Supreme Court judge. I mean, he's a lawyer, and if not him, she'll pick somebody like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, or who's equally bad, a younger one. And Donald has gotten a list of, I don't know, 12 or 15 Supreme Court judges, and the people there were much less objectionable from a libertarian point of view than whoever Hillary is going to pick. So on war and on the Supreme Court and on political correctness, Donald is head and shoulders above Hillary, and I don't agree with you. I very strongly disagree with you when you say that they're really close, and the only reason you're going to go for Donald over Hillary is because of implementation probabilities. I agree with you on implementation probabilities, but that seems to me to be a minor point.
Right. Well, no, I mean, I think, I think that, for example, when it was, Bernie Sanders running, I think he probably had a lot, and Jill Stein has a lot of horrible ideas. But, to me, like, I've never understood, like, a lot of Republicans and, criticize Obama, and they say Obama sucks, and then they criticize him for playing golf all the time. And this to me always boggled my mind. If you think a guy sucks, why do you want him doing more? Yes, I wish every politician would do nothing but play golf. Please.
Yes.
I'm very happy when you play golf.
Golf is where it's at. The commies, the Marxists, used to say that they want to have a statue of Ludwig von Mises in their central planning hall. Why? Because he gave good criticisms in the Marxist view of socialism, but they were all wrong. But they encouraged the socialists to improve their system. In like manner, I would say what we should do in the Libertarian Hall of Fame, we should have a statue of Monica Lewinsky, because Monica Lewinsky made it impossible for Bill Clinton to do what he would have otherwise done, because he was so busy fending her off. So she's our gal, in the same sense that you're talking about golf. Yes, right. We want Obama to play golf. We want all these guys to play golf.
Well, that Mel Brooks line. Mel Brooks was asked, what do you think about, the president cheating on his wife? And Mel Brooks said if he doesn't do it to his wife, he's going to do it to the country. So, I agree.
Right. Okay. We agree on that.
Anyway. Right. And, and it's interesting because people never see the forest from the trees. So, for example, Gary, to me, politics is all about not seeing the forest from the trees, and what you say is more important than what you do, right? So, for instance, Gary Johnson was asked, what about the Aleppo situation? And he said, what is Aleppo? And everyone hated him on that. And I'm like, I don't want any politician to know where any cities in the world are.
Well, no,
that way they can't bomb them.
No, we have to be fair. We have to recognize that there are some benefits of imperialism. One of the benefits of imperialism is we get to know geography better, because who would know where Aleppo is if not for imperialism? So thank God for, well, you see why the moderate streak of me is coming out. I'm moderately defending imperialism on grounds that we learn geography better. And a second ground for supporting imperialism is that movies and plays and novels are enhanced, because now we have more to write about, some Manchurian candidate or what have you. But apart from that, I'm against Aleppo. But, I think that Gary's Aleppo moment, if we can call it that, or Aleppo Gate, or whatever you want to call it, was actually good.
I agree.
Because he got a lot of publicity, and it was true it's negative publicity, but my view is that there's no such thing as bad publicity as long as they spell your name right. And
well, I disagree with that. I disagree that there's no such thing as, you got publicity in the New York Times. Was that good for you?
Yes, absolutely. They spelled my name correctly. Libertarianism was had more publicity. I have to grant to the New York Times that they spelled my name correctly. And you have to grant me that the mainstream media spelled Gary Johnson's name correctly. And not only did they spell his name correctly, but they had pictures of him. They had the 10 seconds of him saying, "What's Aleppo?" And also, he gets credit because if that question were asked of Hillary and she didn't know what Aleppo was, she would have BS'd. You can't imagine her admitting that she doesn't know something, right? She would have said, "Oh, well, God knows what." She changed the subject or whatever. But I think Gary Johnson gets credit in the public eye for honesty. He didn't know, so sue him. And I think the evidence bears me out on this, namely that he got a little boost in his ratings. He went up from, 8 to 9% or whatever it was, because of Aleppo. Now, obviously, the correct statement on Aleppo is the one that you were saying. We shouldn't know about Aleppo. We should have nothing to do with Aleppo. Aleppo is a foreign country. Let them take care of their own business. The U.S. shouldn't have troops anywhere near Aleppo. If Gary Johnson had said that, that would have been good. I didn't catch what he said afterward, because all the mainstream media cut it off right after he said, "Oh, Aleppo in Syria," and then I didn't catch what he said about Syria. Once he knew that Aleppo was in Syria, then he knew obviously what the Syrian situation was. But the point is that it's sort of a strange thing. We have a strange political election in 2016, and one of the strangest things is he got caught stepping on his tongue with Aleppo, and instead of hurting him, it almost helped him. And maybe I think on net balance did help him.
True. But anyway, to get back to this, and we'll move on to other topics. I think there's a difference between saying, Trump is better than Hillary, than, doing a rah-rah, libertarians for Trump thing. And so, right, you could just simply, if someone asks your opinion, who do you think's the lesser evil? I think that's different than saying, we should be behind Trump. I mean, first of all, libertarians are fringe enough. I think marketing's a good idea, right? I mean, I think that, I think libertarians are associated, unfortunately, with bad things. And I don't think, especially a divisive figure like Trump. I mean, do people really want to associate libertarians being a fan of Trump? I don't see how that benefits us.
When the Vietnam War was on, I guess this is a little bit before your time personally, but obviously you know about it. Murray Rothbard and us libertarians, about 10 of us, joined the thing called the Peace and Freedom Movement, or the Peace and Freedom Society, or something like that. And it was to get the U.S. out of Vietnam. Who were the other two groups? There was Progressive Labor, the Maoists, and then there were the Trotskyists. And Murray made an alliance with them. Look, does that mean that Murray thinks that Progressive Labor or the Trotskyites were good libertarians? Does that mean he supports them? No, he supports them in only one thing, namely getting the U.S. out of Vietnam. He made alliances with the right, paleo-libertarians on other things. When the left was going berserk, he would make an alliance with the right. What is wrong with making alliances with other people where you agree on something? Look, we libertarians are in favor of legalizing marijuana, right? Right. I mean, that's a silly question, of course. We make an alliance with NORML, National Organization to Repeal Marijuana Laws. They're all a bunch of lefties. Right? Does that mean we support them on their leftyism? No, it just means we make common cause with them on getting rid of marijuana laws. Murray made common cause with progressive labor, the Maoists, and the Trotskyites to get out of Vietnam. I and my colleagues who started with me, the Libertarians for Trump, are making an alliance with Donald Trump. It doesn't mean we think he's a libertarian. It just means we are making an alliance with him. Now, are we libertarians not to make alliances with anyone on anything? I think that's silly.
Well, that's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying that I think being concerned with your brand name or marketing, I think, is important. I mean, that's sort of what I'm saying. Right?
Yeah,
I mean,
but
Rothbard made alliances with David Duke. Now, I agree, being a racist bigot is certainly better than being a fan of big government, because simply hating people does less harm than wanting to blow people up. But in terms of name branding, I don't see how it helps us, because when people are going to, whether they like it or not, people are going to lump us in with some bad name branding. And
well, then what you're saying is we shouldn't have alliances with anyone who's not a pure libertarian, which means we don't have an alliance with them. We're the same as them because we might be branded with them. No. Look, Mises supported the Nazis over the commies. A lot of classical liberals in Europe thought that Hitler would be less intrusive than the commies. I don't know if they were right or not, but according to your logic, then we'll be associated with Nazis, and we shouldn't do that. And we'll be associated with progressive labor, we'll be associated with the Trotskyites, we'll be associated with NORML. Look, what you're really saying comes down to the fact we shouldn't have alliances with anyone because, God forbid, we will then be associated with them. And I think that that's a bad strategy. I think we should grin and bear the fact that our enemies, look, our enemies are going to say bad things about us no matter what we do. Even if we had no alliances, they're going to say, well, we favor the slavery, like the New York Times is saying about me. They'll just come up with stuff anyway. So we might as well have alliances just from a strategic point of view, because if we don't have alliances, then we don't have as much power as we would otherwise have. And also, when you have an alliance, sometimes you can peel off some of those guys. Namely, if you have an alliance with NORML, and the NORML people say, well, libertarians aren't so bad. They certainly agree with us on marijuana. What else do the libertarians think about? Oh, about the minimum wage? Well, obviously, minimum wage is good. But then they start saying, well, libertarians are pretty good are very good on legalization of marijuana. Let's give them a chance. Let's give them a chance to explain. So we have a chance of getting some of them. Of course, they have a chance of getting some of us. There are libertarians who then peel off from libertarianism, but I think our view is true and gorgeous and beautiful and courageous and everything else. So whenever we make an alliance, I think we get more of them than they get of us, so liberty is enhanced. You're right. There is a danger to it. But look, there's a danger of getting out of bed in the morning. Should we stay in bed all day and not get out? Yes, there's a danger we'll be branded as, oh, we're just a Nazi, or we're just a lefty, or just a righty, or whatever. We're a conservative. Look, there's this group called the Federalist Society, which is a bunch of law school students and professors, and it's sort of an alliance of conservatives and libertarians. Well, maybe we shouldn't join them in this because we'll get branded as, God forbid, a conservative. And I don't want to be branded as a conservative any more than I want to be branded as a lefty, because we're neither lefties nor righties. We're neither liberals in the modern sense of liberals, progressives, nor are we conservatives. We're unique. We're beautiful. We're wonderful. We're the cat's meow. But I think that this recipe of yours that we shouldn't have any associations with anyone because we'll be branded as them is wrong. Now, look, maybe David Duke, look, I don't say every alliance is a good alliance. Maybe we shouldn't ally ourselves with Trump. I'm open to that. But my judgment is that there's nothing wrong with being allied with Donald. And, we certainly, no one in Libertarians for Trump ever said that Donald was a libertarian. We just said he's more libertarian than Hillary, which is which is a very different thing.
Okay, fair enough. Although I'm not saying you shouldn't make alliances with people. That's not my position. Just
Okay.
clear.
Okay.
Maybe not an
you're
alliance
saying-
for Trump. And look, I mean, I sort of say, and my position is, to me, voting for Trump is sort of like smoking. It's bad for you, but it annoys all the right people.
I love it. I love
there is a benefit, and that is it pisses off people we hate.
That's beautiful. I love it. That's another reason for supporting Donald. I never thought of that. So thank you.
Yes. Okay. Now, another topic, and I think this is more a technical or verbal dispute. But I've heard you say that you're not for or against individualism or collectivism and stuff like that. And the way I see these terminology is that individualism isn't any solo interaction, and collectivism isn't any group interaction. So it isn't masturbation is individualism and sex is collectivism. Rather, individualism is the idea that every individual has rights, and these rights are sacrosanct. And collectivism is the idea that the individual doesn't have rights, the group has rights, and the rights of the individual can be sacrificed for the goods of the group, which means that something like voluntary collectivism is an oxymoron, just like coercive individualism is an oxymoron.
Well, I think that's a very important topic, and I'm glad you raised it. And I think that verbal disputes are important because the only way we can promote liberty, we're not picking up any guns to promote liberty. The only way we're going to promote liberty is we're picking up our mouths or our fingers on the keyboard. And what are we using as raw material? Words. So words are important. And those blankety blanks stole the word liberal from us. We were the classical liberals. Friedman and Hayek and historically Bastiat and people like that, David Hume were classical liberals, and they stole the word from us and they trashed it so badly that they had to drop it and they picked up progressive, but somehow we haven't got it back. And if they keep taking words away from us, we'll have no words left. I mean, you can't even say he anymore because you have to say he or she, and that's a whole other issue. So I applaud your raising the point. I mean, a lot of people will think it's trivial because it's just verbal, and I disagree. I agree with you that it's important. Okay, now having said that, you're wrong on everything else. The way I see it, I don't usually use masturbation as the example, but it's a good one.
I do.
The example I use is team sports versus individual sports. So what are team sports? Soccer, football, baseball, basketball. Those are collective sports, whereas individual sports are swimming and shot putting and running and things like that. Chess playing would be an individual sport. Now, do we as libertarians have any bias toward or away from either team sports or individual sports? Of course not. I mean, it's a matter of indifference. It's like vanilla or chocolate ice cream. Neither one is more libertarian than the other. Neither team sports nor individual sports are more libertarian. And the same thing for masturbation and sex. And you might as well. Okay, I don't want to go down the sexual route here. Okay. So
Walter Block favors masturbation. New York Times.
No, you're the one who's favoring it because I'm indifferent between it. Well, not indifferent.
Well, it only requires one consenting adult.
I sometimes say, we libertarians, we never accomplish anything, but at least we have fun, and we're having fun. I always have fun talking to you in these discussions, so it's a pleasure.
Likewise.
Okay, so
anyway, you were saying about masturbation.
No, I wasn't saying anything about masturbation. I was saying about individualism versus collectivism. Now, look, the kibbutz, the hippie commune, I work at a Jesuit school, Loyola University, New Orleans. The Jesuit order is a collective order, but it's voluntary. And to say that it's collective and therefore it can't be voluntary, I think is highly problematic.
But what libertarian has said that?
No, but that's the implication. You see, if you look up the word collectivism and look up libertarianism, libertarians are bashing collectivism. How do you think the collectivists feel about this? And I don't mean the collectivists who are violating individual rights. I mean the collectivists like the kibbutz.
But we're not bashing the voluntary collectivists. When we say collectivism is bad, we're bashing the Soviet Russia, the Nazis, coercive systems, right? I have not read any libertarian who says that team sports is bad because we all are an island.
No, of course, nobody attacks team sports. That's silly. But I'm saying that that's the logical implication of the way the words are used commonly by most people. You're against collectivism, and then you're against collective action. Well, the market is a collective action. Look, when you bought that shirt, that blue and white striped shirt that I see you wearing, that was a collective activity. The guy sold it to you. You bought it from him. That was a collective activity. There's nothing wrong with collectivism per se. Now, obviously, there's something wrong with initiating violence against innocent people, which is a very different thing. Now, I just want to mention that there are two dimensions of collectivism versus individualism. One is political. We've been discussing that. The other is methodological. And here, I'm a methodological individualist, not collectivist. Here, collectivism is bad, but not normatively, but positively. Namely, there are some people that think that there is such a thing as a group over and above the individuals, which is nonsense. I mean, if you take I don't know, the New York Yankees, and they got 35 guys on the team, and you take them all away, you kick them all out of the team, there's no team. And there's no such thing as New York Yankees apart from the members of it. Okay, so on that ground, I'm a methodological individualist, not a methodological collectivist. Fine. But now let's get back to the political realm. And here I say that individualism and collectivism we are indifferent between the two of them, so to speak. We have no brief for one or the other as libertarians, because the way you're using the word is adventitious. Collectivism just means collect. It doesn't mean coerce. How do you input coerciveness into collectivism? Now, you obviously...
Well, I don't care what the word literally means. I care how words are commonly used in the way people speak. I can go around telling people that I'm gay and I think it means happy, but no one uses that anymore. I could say I want to burn some fags, meaning a couple of sticks, but I'm going to be arrested for a hate crime. So I think it's important to define words not based on necessarily what they literally mean, but based on how other people understand them.
Both. A lot of people understand collectivism differently than libertarians. I would venture to say that most people are not libertarians. You'll agree with me that, what percentage of the population libertarian? 2, 3, 5, 10% tops. Maybe 15 if you broaden it a little bit. But that leaves 85% of the people who use collectivism very differently. They use collectivism in a more positive way. And based on your view of how the word is used, we should not be attacking collectivism. And secondly, etymology is also important. Anarchism. We favor anarchism because literally it means an means against, and so you're against archy, or anarchy means against archy. And what is archy? Unjustified rule. But most people use anarchy to mean bomb throwing or terrorism or something like that. And yet I think we should hold on to that word. It's our word. We stole it fair and square from the lefties. Right. And if we keep losing words, we'll have no words to use. And you want to lose the word collectivism. And so etymologically is also important in addition to the way the words are being used. So I think I've got you on both counts. Namely, more people use collectivism positively than negatively. And also, etymologically, collectivism got nothing to do with coercion. It just means collectivity or a group or something like that. So I'm saying, now let me bring up another word a little bit off the topic, and that is rent-seeking. Now, at George Mason, where you're now a graduate student, the public choice people use rent-seeking as a vicious sort of a thing. Now, I agree with what they mean by rent-seeking is vicious, namely using government to get unfair competitive advantage. Fine. But why pick the innocent word rent? Rent is a fine word. I rent a car, I rent a house, or economic rent, or, the difference between wages and next best opportunities and all that. Why do they pick the word rent? And so I'm also on the warpath on rent. That is rent seeking. We ought to call it booty seeking or theft or something like that. Namely, they're misusing language, and I think language is important. And one of the now getting back to collectivism, I think collectivism etymologically has nothing to do with coercion, and also the way most people use the word is positively. So we libertarians ought to stop that. We ought to stop besmirching collectivism.
Right.
We ought to start saying that we're indifferent between collectivism and individualism. This is sort of the Ayn Rand influence, the baleful influence of Ayn Rand. She was very much in favor of individualism and against collectivism. She's wrong on this
No, but
issue.
she defined it in a coercive way. I don't think she was against team sports.
She shouldn't define it in a coercive way. One, because etymologically it doesn't mean that, and two, because most people don't use the word that way. And why should we change it?
They do.
I'm sorry?
When people poo-poo libertarianism, what is the criticism we always hear? We're nothing but rugged individualists. So it's a critique that we're individualists, and they're not. So the people who are for liberty are a bunch of individualists, and they're poo-pooing that, and they say we're the collectivists, and what do they advocate?
No, but most people have a positive spin on collectivism, and it's true that a lot of people equate collectivism with government, which is very bad. But a lot of people also equate it with a kibbutz or a commune or a gathering of that sort, and that is not bad. So it's just confusing. It'd be much better etymologically and I think strategically if we left off bashing collectivism and stuck to bashing what we really want to bash, namely initiation of violence against innocent people.
Right. Well, I have a libertarian friend, and he says he thinks that we should call libertarianism puppyism. So then every time someone criticizes it, we could say, what, are you against puppies? So
I love it. Puppyism. That's great.
So we should, from now on, we are the advocates of puppyism, and anyone who's against us must hate puppies.
What a note to end on. I have another appointment at 3:00. I'm sorry we started a little late, but next time we'll get it on and we'll do better. But
Sounds good.
Been a pleasure as always, and I look forward to the next time.
Sounds good. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.